Hey guys, tonight we begin with snow. Not the cute holiday Hallmark kind, not the gentle flakes drifting past a cozy cafe window. I mean the kind of snow that swallows sound, the kind that stretches to the horizon and makes you question your life choices, the kind that belongs to Yakutia, also known as the Saka Republic, which is basically winter with paperwork. So dim the lights, pull up your blanket, maybe imagine a fireplace that definitely exists and is definitely warm, and let's drift into the frozen quiet of the taiga. Tonight's story is about an 80-year-old woman and a wolf pack. Yes, but don't worry, we are not doing loud drama, we are not doing cinematic jump scares. We are simply going to float through the cold, one careful step at a time. Because in Yakutia, everything happens slowly, even danger. Now, Yakutia is one of those places that makes other cold places feel insecure. Winter temperatures routinely drop to -40, -50 degrees Celsius. The kind of cold where your eyelashes freeze politely and then snap off if you blink too aggressively. The air itself feels solid. Metal becomes unfriendly. Breath turns to smoke and then to tiny crystals that vanish into the white. And somewhere inside this frozen expanse lived an elderly woman named Anna. Anna Ivanovna, if we want to be formal, but she would not insist on that. She had long since outlived the need for formalities. Anna was 80 years old, which in Yakutia is both impressive and slightly suspicious. You do not casually survive 8 decades in the Siberian taiga. You negotiate with it. You endure it. You accept that winter is not a season. It is a personality. She had been born in a wooden house that leaned slightly to the left. She had grown up during times when food was scarce and news traveled slowly. She had married young. She had buried her husband decades ago. She had raised children who eventually moved to larger towns where plumbing was reliable and wolves were mostly theoretical. But Anna stayed, because this was home. Her village was small, a cluster of wooden houses huddled together as if even buildings needed emotional support. Smoke curled from chimneys in winter, which was most of the year. Dogs barked occasionally. Snowmobiles replaced horses, but the rhythm remained ancient. Wake up, stoke the fire, feed the animals, boil tea, step outside and measure survival in firewood stacks. Anna's house sat slightly apart from the others, not dramatically far, just far enough that on a heavy snow day she became her own island. She kept chickens in warmer months, a goat once, briefly. Mostly, she kept a garden during the short summer and preserved everything with the intensity of someone who knows summer is a rumor. Her hands were permanently shaped by labor, thick knuckles, slow fingers. She moved carefully, but not weakly. The taiga had not made her fragile, it had made her efficient. Now, wolves in Yakutia are not fairy tale villains. They are practical creatures, lean, quiet, organized. In winter, when prey grows scarce and snow deepens, they travel farther. Hunger makes them curious. And this particular winter was not generous. Snow had come early, then more snow, then a cold snap so sharp it seemed to ring like glass. The moose had migrated unpredictably. Smaller animals burrowed deep, and a wolf pack, perhaps 6, maybe 8, began drifting closer to human settlements, not because they wanted drama, because they wanted calories. Anna first noticed them by the tracks. Long, deliberate lines in the snow behind her shed, too large for foxes, too purposeful for stray dogs. She crouched slowly, her knees protesting in that familiar elderly way, and touched the print. Fresh. She did not gasp. She did not panic. She simply sighed, the way one does when discovering yet another inconvenience. Well, of course, because in Yakutia,
If something can become slightly more difficult, it eventually will. She told a neighbor the next day. The neighbor shrugged in the universal Siberian language of mild concern. Yes, wolves had been seen near the tree line. Yes, they were probably hungry. Yes, everyone should keep animals secured. Life continued. For a while. The nights grew louder. Not loud in a city sense, louder in a wilderness sense. Howls carried across the flat white fields, long echoing notes that seemed less like threats and more like announcements. We are here. We are hungry. We are patient. Anna would pause while washing a cup, listen, then resume washing. She had heard wolves before, decades ago, during worse winters, during thinner years. But this time felt different. The pack did not pass through. They lingered. One evening, as the sun dipped early, because winter days in Yakutia are brief and slightly rude, Anna stepped outside to bring in extra firewood. The sky was lavender. The snow reflected a faint blue glow. The air was so cold it felt clean. And there, near the edge of her property, stood a wolf. Not charging, not snarling, simply standing. Gray fur thick with winter, eyes steady, calculating perhaps, or simply observing. Anna froze. The wolf froze. For a long moment, they regarded one another.
It is strange how quickly the human mind rearranges priorities. Suddenly, the firewood did not matter. The cold did not matter. Only distance mattered, and movement. Anna did not run. Running in deep snow at 80 years old is optimistic at best. Instead, she straightened as much as her spine allowed. She lifted the bundle of wood slightly, as if reminding the wolf she was not entirely decorative. The wolf tilted its head, a small, almost curious motion. Then, without drama, it turned and loped back toward the trees. Anna stood there for another full minute, just in case. Then she carried the wood inside, closed the door carefully, and added an extra log to the stove. That night, the howls were closer. Now, let's float gently into the following days, because survival stories are rarely explosive. They are accumulations of small decisions. Anna began adjusting her routine. She went outside only during full daylight. She carried a long wooden stick, not because she believed she could defeat a wolf pack with it, but because holding something solid feels reassuring. She checked her doors twice. She reinforced a loose hinge that had been loose for approximately 12 years, but had never felt urgent until now. The village discussed the wolves in low tones. A dog had gone missing at the far edge of town. Chickens vanished from another yard. Tracks circled sheds at night. The pack was testing boundaries, and hunger makes boundaries flexible. One afternoon, Anna needed water from the well behind her house. The pump inside had frozen again, because of course it had. The well sat about 20 meters from her back door, a short distance, in summer laughably short. In minus 45 degrees, across uneven snow, under a sky the color of steel, it felt like an expedition. She wrapped her scarf tighter, pulled on her thickest coat, gloves layered over gloves. She stepped outside. The snow squeaked beneath her boots, that distinct brittle sound of extreme cold. Each breath burned slightly. Halfway to the well, she felt it before she saw it, that prickling awareness, that sense of being measured. She turned her head slowly. 3 wolves stood near the tree line, not close enough to lunge, not far enough to ignore. They were spaced apart, intentional, watching. Anna's heart thudded once, hard, then settled into a slower rhythm.
Panic wastes oxygen. Oxygen was valuable. She continued walking, slow, deliberate. The wolves moved parallel to her, keeping distance, testing. She reached the well, lowered the bucket. The rope creaked. The sound seemed offensively loud in the frozen air. The wolves advanced a few steps. Anna did not look at them directly now. Predators read eyes. She kept them in her peripheral vision. Bucket up, water sloshing faintly, heavy. Her arms trembled slightly, partly from age, partly from cold, partly from the quiet understanding that if she fell, this would become very inconvenient. She began walking back. The wolves closed the gap. 10 meters. 8. One gave a short, sharp bark, not playful. Anna stopped. Very slowly, she turned toward them, lifted her stick, and did something unexpected. She shouted, not a scream, not hysteria, a deep, forceful, irritated shout. The kind of shout one uses at stubborn livestock, the kind that says, "I am still here, I am not food, I am not finished." The sound startled even her. It echoed strangely in the cold air. The wolves paused. One stepped back. Anna took 2 firm steps forward, stick raised. It was not bravery, it was calculation. Predators prefer easy outcomes. An upright, loud, advancing human with a stick is less easy than an elderly figure collapsing in snow. The standoff lasted perhaps 10 seconds, which in -45 degrees feels like a philosophical lifetime. Then the lead wolf turned. The others followed. They retreated several meters, not fleeing, but reassessing. Anna resumed walking, back straight, pace steady. She did not look behind her until her hand touched the door handle. Inside, she placed the bucket down carefully. Then she sat. Her hands shook now, not from cold. She poured herself tea, missed the cup slightly on the first attempt, adjusted. Outside, the wolves circled once more before fading into the trees. And that was only the beginning, because the pack would return. Hunger does not vanish after a single negotiation. And Anna, at 80 years old, would need to outlast not just a night, but an entire winter. So, settle deeper into your pillow. The snow is still falling, and the taiga is very patient.
So, the wolves retreated, but not very far. And that is the thing about hunger in the Siberian taiga. It does not storm the gates. It lingers. It watches. It waits for you to make a mistake. Anna did not sleep much that night, not because she was terrified. Terror burns too brightly. This was something quieter, a steady awareness. Every creak of wood as the house adjusted to the cold felt louder. Every faint brush of wind against the walls sounded intentional. She lay beneath heavy quilts, staring at the ceiling beams darkened by decades of smoke from the iron stove. The fire crackled softly. Outside, a howl rose again, long, low, not frantic, just present. She exhaled slowly into the darkness. "Well," she murmured, "we will see who gets tired first." Morning came late, as it does in winter. A pale gray light seeped through the frost-coated window. The temperature had dropped further overnight. The air inside the house felt thinner somehow, even with the stove working hard. Anna sat up carefully, her joints complaining in familiar protest. 80 years of living in Yakutia does not grant you magical knees, it grants you stubbornness. She dressed in layers, wool over cotton, another wool over that, thick stockings, boots lined with fur that had outlived several governments.
Before stepping outside, she paused at the door and listened. Silence, which was not comforting. She opened it anyway. The cold slapped her face immediately. Her breath crystallized in front of her like a tiny cloud giving up. The yard looked untouched at first glance, smooth, white, peaceful. Then she saw the tracks, closer this time. They had circled the house during the night, loops and lines pressed deep into the snow. At least 5 animals, maybe more. One set of prints approached the door, stopped, turned, testing. Anna did not comment. She simply stepped over the nearest track and began her morning routine. She checked the woodpile, lower than she liked. Of course it was. Winter eats firewood like a bored aristocrat sampling desserts. She would need to haul more from the tree line, which, inconveniently, was where the wolves preferred to stand. Let's drift slowly to midday, because that is when the sky brightens just enough to feel manageable. Anna wrapped her scarf twice around her neck and gripped her wooden stick, not because she believed it made her invincible, but because hands like to hold something. The walk to the woodpile was short, 15 meters past the shed, 20 past the fence. The snow creaked under each step, that sharp, brittle sound of extreme cold. She moved steadily, breathing in controlled rhythms. Halfway there, she sensed movement. 2 wolves stood near the trees, one slightly ahead of the other, watching. They did not growl. They did not bare teeth. They simply existed. Anna kept walking. When she reached the woodpile, she bent slowly, gathering several logs into her arms. The effort made her back tighten. She ignored it. There would be time for complaining later. A third wolf appeared farther to the right. They were forming a loose arc. Now wolves are intelligent. They calculate risk. An elderly human alone is not an impossible target, but an upright, aware human who shouts and advances, slightly less appealing. Anna straightened with her bundle of wood. She shifted her weight deliberately, facing them squarely. "Go," she said, firmly. The word vanished into the cold air, but her posture remained. One wolf stepped forward, just one pace. Anna responded immediately. She stomped her boot hard into the snow and raised the stick high above her shoulder, not swinging, just displaying height, volume, presence. "Go!" Anna shouted again, louder. The sound startled birds from a nearby tree. The wolves hesitated. The lead one flicked his ears back. Another turned his head slightly, reassessing. The language in the taiga is often psychological. After a few long seconds, the wolves shifted backward, not retreating fully, but allowing space. Anna walked forward instead of back. 3 firm steps toward them. That surprised them more than the shouting. Predators prefer retreating prey. Advancing prey complicates the narrative. The wolves yielded another few meters. Anna did not push further. She turned and began the slow walk back to the house, logs clutched tightly. Her heart beat steadily but hard. Her breathing remained controlled. She did not look behind her. Once inside, she leaned against the door and closed her eyes briefly. This was becoming routine, and routine can be dangerous. Days passed like this, small negotiations, small advances and retreats. The wolves tested at night, circling, sniffing near the shed. Once she heard claws scrape lightly against wood. She reinforced the lower boards with spare planks, hammering slowly, deliberately. The sound of metal striking metal echoed sharply in the frozen air. The village, too, grew quieter. People limited their movements. A hunter mentioned spotting the pack crossing the frozen river beyond town. Thin prey this season. Hard times. One afternoon, a neighbor's dog did not return. There were tracks, and then there were not. Anna listened to the distant arguing voices of villagers discussing whether to organize a hunt. Ammunition was limited. Fuel for snowmobiles was precious. Everything required calculation. Meanwhile, the wolves continued their quiet campaign. Then came the storm. It began with wind, low at first, sliding across the open fields like a whisper. By evening, snow followed, thick, relentless. Visibility shrank to a few meters. The world beyond Anna's window dissolved into white motion. Storms in Yakutia do not merely inconvenience you, they isolate you completely. By nightfall, drifts pressed against the lower half of her door. The wind howled down the chimney briefly before she adjusted the flue. The house creaked, wooden beams flexing under pressure. And outside, somewhere within that swirling white, the wolf pack sheltered too. Storms change dynamics. Prey hides. Movement becomes difficult. Energy becomes expensive. The next morning, when the storm finally eased, the landscape had transformed. Snowdrifts rose like frozen waves. The path to the well had vanished entirely. Anna opened the door carefully and pushed against a wall of snow. It resisted. She pushed harder. Slowly, the door carved a narrow gap. The cold felt even sharper after the storm. She stepped out, shovel in hand this time. Clearing snow at 80 is not efficient, but it is necessary. She worked slowly, push, lift, rest, repeat. Halfway through carving a path to the well, she sensed it again, that awareness. She turned her head. The wolves stood atop the drift, elevated now, giving them a clearer view. 5 visible, perhaps more beyond. The storm likely cost them calories. Their ribs showed faintly beneath thick fur. Hunger sharpened posture. They did not keep as much distance this time. Anna straightened slowly, leaning on her shovel. She did not shout immediately. Instead, she watched them. The lead animal stepped down from the drift, one careful pace, then another. Snow muffled sound. The world felt suspended. Anna's options were limited. Running was impossible. Retreating through deep snow would be slow. So she did the only thing that had worked before. She made herself larger. She lifted the shovel high, spread her arms wide despite the weight, and released a deep, sustained shout that echoed across the frozen yard. It was not a scream of fear. It was a declaration. The wolves halted. One barked sharply. Another circled slightly to the side. Anna stepped forward. Just one step, then another. The distance narrowed to perhaps 6 meters. Close enough to see their breath plume into the air. Close enough to understand that this balance could tip. But wolves do not gamble lightly. An injured wolf in winter is often a dead wolf. After a tense pause, the lead animal turned its head, then its body. Slowly, the pack withdrew once more toward the trees. Anna remained standing until they vanished into the pale forest. Only then did her shoulders sag. She resumed shoveling. Because survival is rarely dramatic. It is repetitive, exhausting, unromantic. The wolves were still there. The winter was far from over. And Anna, stubborn as the frozen earth beneath her boots, was not finished negotiating.
By now, the standoff had become almost routine, which is not something one should ever say about a wolf pack lingering outside one's yard. But routine is how humans cope. We turn even the improbable into a schedule.
Anna woke each morning in her small wooden house in Yakutia with the same quiet ritual. Sit up slowly, let the dizziness pass, swing her legs over the side of the bed, listen. The listening mattered most. Some mornings brought only wind, a long sighing sound across the white fields. Other mornings carried faint movement, a crunch of snow, a distant bark. Once, the low rumble of wolves communicating beyond the tree line. They were not leaving. If anything, they were settling in. The village had grown quieter too. Snowmobiles were used sparingly now. People hurried between buildings, doors shut faster. Even the dogs barked less, as if they understood that drawing attention was no longer wise. Anna adjusted again. She moved her small stack of emergency firewood inside the house rather than keeping it in the outer shed. It made the room cramped. Logs leaned against walls like silent guests, but it meant fewer trips outside. She began boiling extra water at night and storing it in heavy metal containers just in case the well became inaccessible again. Planning ahead in Yakutia is not paranoia, it is tradition. Still, supplies diminish. By midweek, she needed more wood from the larger pile near the trees. There was no avoiding it. The stove could not negotiate with winter. The sky that morning was pale blue, painfully clear. The cold felt sharper under open sunlight. Snow glittered like crushed glass. Anna stepped outside with her stick in one hand and a small rope sling over her shoulder to help drag logs back more easily. Efficiency, even at 80. The yard looked deceptively peaceful. Too peaceful. Halfway to the woodpile, she saw them. Not near the tree line this time, closer. 3 wolves sat directly beside the stacked logs, as if they had reserved seating. Anna stopped. The wolves did not rise immediately. They simply watched her approach. The audacity, she thought quietly, though she did not say it aloud. This was new. They were testing proximity now, reducing distance gradually, like careful mathematicians solving an equation. Anna did not retreat. Retreat, she sensed, would shift something permanently. Instead, she walked forward, slow, upright. At 10 meters, the wolves stood. Their bodies were leaner now. Hunger had tightened their frames, ribs faint beneath thick winter fur. At 8 meters, one wolf stepped sideways, attempting to widen the arc around her. Anna adjusted her angle too, keeping them in front of her. "Not today," she said calmly. Her voice did not carry far in the brittle air, but tone matters. Even animals sense certainty. She advanced another step. The wolves held position. For a long moment, nothing moved. It is strange how quiet confrontation can be. No music, no dramatic wind gust, just breath steaming in the air. Anna lifted her stick slowly and tapped it against the nearest log pile. A sharp knock echoed. The sudden sound startled them more than shouting had before. She knocked again, harder. One wolf flinched. Anna seized that flicker of hesitation. She stepped directly toward the lead wolf and let out a firm, commanding yell, deep from her chest, not her throat. The wolf's ears flattened briefly, and then finally they shifted backward, reluctant but yielding, not running, just conceding ground.
Anna moved to the woodpile immediately and began loading logs into her sling. Her movements were deliberate but efficient. She did not waste seconds. Behind her, the wolves circled slowly, maintaining distance now, but closer than earlier in the week. When the sling was full, she dragged it behind her, step by careful step.
The wolves followed, not rushing, not lunging, simply trailing her across the yard. It felt almost ceremonial, a procession of hunger escorting her home. At 5 meters from her door, she turned sharply, raised the stick again, and took 2 aggressive steps toward them. They halted. Another pause, another calculation. Finally, they drifted back toward the drifted snowbanks. Anna reached her door and slipped inside, heart pounding harder than she preferred to admit. Inside, she leaned her forehead briefly against the wood. This was escalating, and winter still had weeks left. That night, the howls changed. They were closer, sharper, less wandering, and more concentrated. At one point, claws scraped audibly against the outer wall near her window, not violently, almost experimentally. Anna sat upright in her chair beside the stove, fully dressed, stick resting across her knees. The fire flickered. Shadows moved along the walls. She did not panic, but she did not sleep either. By morning, fresh tracks covered nearly every side of the house. They had circled repeatedly, investigating. The village finally organized a small patrol, 2 men on snowmobiles, rifles slung over their shoulders, scanning the outskirts. The machines roared across the frozen fields, shattering the quiet. The wolves withdrew deeper into the forest for a day. Just one. Then they returned. Hunger had not been solved by noise. By the end of the week, Anna noticed something else. The pack was thinner, their movements less cautious, more direct. Desperation reduces patience. One afternoon, as twilight crept in early, she stepped outside briefly to shake snow from the lower window frame. It was a small task, 2 minutes at most. She did not see them at first. They were behind the shed. 5 shapes emerging almost silently. Closer than ever. No arc this time, no wide spacing, just direct approach. Anna felt the shift immediately. This was no longer testing distance. This was probing opportunity. She backed slowly toward her door, stick raised. The lead wolf advanced to within perhaps 4 meters, close enough that she could see frost on its whiskers. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain they could hear it. "Go," she said, steady but firm. The wolf did not retreat. Another step forward. Snow crunched. Anna did something instinctive then, something ancient. She hurled the stick directly toward the wolf's face, not to injure, but to disrupt. The sudden motion, the flying object, the unpredictable angle, it broke the calm calculation. The wolf jumped back sharply. The others flinched. In that half-second of confusion, Anna lunged forward herself, arms wide, shouting with every ounce of air in her lungs. The reversal startled them completely. The pack scattered backward several meters, regrouping near the shed. Anna did not stop shouting until her voice rasped. Then she retrieved the fallen stick, walking backward toward her door. The wolves did not follow immediately. They watched. But something had shifted again. They had tested a closer approach, and it had failed. Inside, Anna's hands trembled more than before. She sank into her chair and stared at the stove. This could not continue indefinitely. Either the wolves would find easier prey, or winter would outlast them, or something else would give. Outside, twilight settled gently over the taiga. The forest stood silent. The snow reflected faint starlight. The wolves remained somewhere beyond the yard, waiting. And Anna, 80 years old and stubborn as frozen earth, waited too.